And so, thank you for joining me for Soaring Saturday Sessions. This week we're discussing the rules of the mind. The very first rule of the mind is that the mind learns by repetition. That means whatever we repeat to ourselves, we're going to learn. We're going to make ourselves be whatever we repeat to ourselves. This is a very common thing for us to do. We say, oh, my horrible memory, or oh, my this, or oh, I'm this way, or oh, I'm that way, and our mind believes it. And that's okay. So what do we want to feed our mind? What do we want to repeat to our mind? These are the important things that we need to learn about. Only repeat to your mind exactly what you want. Only repeat to your mind exactly what you want. The mind cannot hold conflicting beliefs or thoughts. They will cancel each other out. If we are talking about a horrible memory and then we're working to learn to have a great memory, and we keep talking about, oh, I have a horrible memory, oh, I need to remember this, it's not going to hold on to it. In fact, it will argue with itself to the point where it drops it off, such as possibly losing weight, and yet, oh, I'm so fat. Or the belief that I'm a horrible person, but telling people I'm really great. The one that comes to mind is hiding an insecurity issue with a narcissistic personality. Things like this. If you try to tell something and it conflicts with something else, it's not going to stick. What is expected tends to be realized. So if you expect to fail, you're going to fail. If you're working to lose weight and you expect to go off your diet, you're going to go off your diet. If you're expecting to drink alcohol when you're stopping drinking alcohol, you're not going to stop. You might stop for a while, but you're going to keep going back. These things keep happening. What is expected tends to be realized. It's not difficult to overcome them, but it helps to work in a hypnotic state to overcome them. It's something I've been trained in, so I understand them, and I still have to work to keep them applied in my life. Imagination is more important than knowledge when dealing with your own mind or the minds of others. This is an important one because whatever we can imagine, we can become. And whatever we have imagined, we are. So if we can't imagine being a thin person, or being a former addict, or being better at something, we're not going to be able to accomplish it. There's going to be a block set up somewhere to it. Now, there may be energetic blocks already set up to it anyway from whatever happened to us when we were children, but there may be a block because we just can't imagine being that way. So it's difficult to change unless we can imagine how we would be. In a battle between emotion and logic, emotion always wins. Our emotions are much stronger than our logic. In fact, we need to use our logic to inform our emotional decisions, but we also need to use our emotion to inform our logic. And whatever we feel is right is what's going to be right for us. Whatever we feel is the way we are, is what's going to happen, how we're going to realize our life. It just doesn't change the situation to try to imagine something different than it is unless we work to remove the wound that started it. So, imagination. Well, you have to be able to imagine it, to reel it. I like to say, I have to feel it to reel it. and I've got to imagine it to be able to feel it. Your mind always does what it thinks you want it to do. Now, this one can be deceptive because your mind is working to do one thing while you're working to do another. Your mind, your subconscious mind, is going to do what it thinks you want it to do because of desire or whatever reason, as opposed to what you consciously want it to do. Remember, the non-conscious mind is working at however many trillions of bits per second, the subconscious mind at 4 to 10 million bits per second, and the conscious mind at 40 to 100 bits per second. So who's in control? The subconscious mind and all of its programs. So it's going to do what it thinks you want it to do, which often is contrary to what you consciously want to do, but you're not feeling the desire. Your mind works to move you from pain to pleasure. If you're imagining there's going to be pain involved, it's going to work to move you to pleasure. That's why drug addiction is so endemic. Because the drug addiction, whether it be alcohol addiction or heroin or whatever, food, television, sex, is there as a medication for the subconscious emotional pain that we're experiencing anyway. So since the mind is going to work to move us from pain to pleasure, it holds us in that state in order to keep us in a pleasurable state. And it can be very difficult to work with some of these particular things simply because the mind wants to work from pain to pleasure, from pleasure to pain, or from pain to pleasure. Excuse me. Your mind responds to the words you use and the pictures you make. This is your imagination working. So if you say teasingly, I have a horrible memory, and then wonder why you have a horrible memory, that's why. Oh, I'm so fat, ha ha ha. But you're not. Eventually you will be. Because your mind is having a picture of you being fat. That's why anorexia and bulimia are such deep-seated situations, because the person is imagining that they're fat. The person is seeing themselves as fat. And they can't see anything else. And it can be a horrible situation to deal with, especially for addiction. And bulimia and anorexia are addictions of a negative input, but addictions. Your mind wants to stay with what is familiar while avoiding what is unfamiliar. This is a survival technique. If we know where the berry bushes are, we're going to be able to go back to them every time. If we don't know where the berry bushes are, then we're not going to be able to find them. So we want to find what's familiar. And we keep going back to the same honeycomb for the same reasons. That's why the familiarity of the drugs we use or the addictions we use is so structured within us, because it's familiar. Oftentimes our pain is so familiar to us that we would rather stay in our state of discomfort, which is comfortable because we know it, than change it. And that can be very difficult to overcome sometimes. Without finding the seed or the root of the problem and removing that, we're just going to keep getting more of the problem. You make your beliefs, and then your beliefs make you. You really have to work to change your beliefs. No matter what you believe is what is going to be your truth. If you believe you're an idiot, you're going to be an idiot. If you believe you're a genius, your mind's going to make you a genius. If you believe that you're a fat slob, your mind's going to make you a fat slob. If you believe you're a hopeless addict or a worthless person, that's what your mind is going to make real for you. And I know of one person who was an incredible genius, a young man, with bicycles. And he recently overdosed. He died of complications of AIDS, but also he overdosed. So it's incredible. The stories that I see and hear of from the homeless people I deal with are just phenomenal. Some of the abuse that they've been through, or some of the things that they've chosen to believe about themselves because of situations that they've been in. What you present to your mind will present back to you. This goes back to addiction, and this goes back to negative belief systems. If you believe you're worthless, if you believe that you're not enough, if you believe that you're hopeless, that there's nothing that can be done for you, this is what's going to be stuck in your mind, and you're never going to be able to overcome it unless you work deep within the mind to overcome it. These rules of the mind aren't unchangeable as far as what they're holding on to, but the rules of the mind are unbendable. They're not going to change, but we must change the beliefs they're attached to, if that makes sense. The strongest force in all of us is that we must act in a way that consistently matches our thinking. This goes back to being worthless, being not enough, being an idiot, or being stupid. It irks me when I hear someone who is intelligent enough to have a job, drive a car, and live on their own talk about how stupid they are. They're not stupid. Oh, it's just me being stupid. You make a mistake. That's not you being stupid. That's you made a mistake. The more we build ourselves up, the better we are. And we are all enough to be able to work within these rules to build ourselves into incredible beings. And it really irks me when I see someone who is incredibly intelligent, who has overcome dyslexia, and is able to hold down a full-time job working with computers, and talks about how stupid they are. And I worked with a girl, and she had narcolepsy and dyslexia. And I finally told her, I said, you know, you're not stupid. You're just a person who sees the world differently and likes to take naps. And it was like a light bulb went on in her. This incredibly beautiful young woman suddenly was shining brightly and was able to do more at the job than she ever thought she was capable of doing. Just simply from changing the perspective of, well, yeah, I see part of the world different than everybody else. And yeah, I like to take naps. And no, she didn't discontinue taking her narcolepsy medicine, but she quit beating herself up over it. And her father had been murdered, was a heroin addict. I met her mother, who was quite the case, and even holding small children emotionally hostage, which this is not uncommon in sociopathy and narcissism. And my heart goes out to that young woman. And I value the experience of having worked with her. Just part of it was simply turning on the light with her. A part of it was getting to witness her growth after the light turned on. Our thoughts form the blueprint that our mind and body work to make our reality. This is where we have to guard our thoughts well. We have to think of ourselves as being enough. We have to feel ourselves being enough. We have to really work to change our thoughts and to adjust our thoughts. This is where affirmations are important. And working on affirmations in a hypnotic state or using theta waves or something like that is a very important way to change the thoughts we have. We can only work within a limited span if we don't know what we're doing. And it's okay that we don't know what we're doing. It's not like we come with instruction manuals. And slowly but surely, we're beginning to build instruction manuals so that possibly even the next generation will be able to teach their children and treat them better, as opposed to making them helpless infants when they're 50 years old. Our beliefs make us, then we make our it just happens no matter what we do. And every single one of these rules has to do with our beliefs. And our body has to follow our commands. That's why fat people stay fat. That's why anorexic people tend to be incredibly difficult to treat. And that's why bipolarism is so hard to treat, because we believe these things, and so we believe we're screwed up, and our body makes us screwed up. Our mind makes us screwed up. I've been working to change things about myself. I have healed bones. I have healed all kinds of things about myself. I haven't yet completely corrected my eyesight. I haven't yet completely overcome every bit of what I consider addictive personality. But I'm much better than I used to be in every way. Your mind doesn't care if what you say is good, bad, indifferent, true, healthy, right, or wrong. It simply acts on your words regardless. Don't joke about being stupid. Never make a joke about something you don't want to be realized. And especially don't make the same joke over and over again, because your mind's going to make it real. No matter what it is, your mind is going to make it real. So if you're talking about how fat you are, or if you're talking about how stupid you are, or how much of a slob you are, or how worthless you are, your mind and your body are going to make them real. If you talk about how weak you are, or think about how weak you are, that's what's going to become your reality. Working within the mind, it does work with certain rules. And any one of my long form videos has access to these particular rules of the mind. And you can download it and work with them. When dealing with the subconscious mind, the greater the conscious effort, the less the subconscious responds. And this is from a conscious point of view. The harder people work to lose weight, they'll do great for a while, but then they'll bounce back and be 10, 20 pounds heavier. And it's consistent. And I watched my mother do it. Because the greater the conscious effort, the harder the subconscious mind will fight against it, because it wants to move us from pain to pleasure. And if we believe it's a hard chore, it's going to make it a hard chore. If we believe it's painful, it's going to make it painful. With my mother, it was sweets. And that's doubly problem because sugar affects the same center in the brain as cocaine, especially processed refined sugars. And that's what's in a lot of our foods. Every thought you think causes a physical reaction and an emotional response. Our thoughts basically make our feelings. Everything that goes on in these cells is sending messages here, and then this is a great chemical factory for the rest of the body. So every thought we think is creating a feeling. Every feeling we think is creating an endless loop of chemical peptides. And there are people I've talked to that say, I don't believe in that. I believe the science. Bruce Lipton has talked about it. Joe Dispenza has talked about it. So our thoughts create our feelings by thinking particular things. We're sending particular messages from particular organs to the brain, and the brain's sending back whatever chemicals that respond to that situation. It's a matter of creating what we call in the hypnosis field an interrupt in order to block the chain. You might see this in neurolinguistic programming or cognitive behavioral therapy, but especially in emotional freedom tapping. And it does work. I know it's strange, but it does work because it's creating an interrupt. Your mind can only respond to words that make pictures. The more vivid the picture, the more powerful the response. This is an incredible thing. If you can't imagine it, if you can't make an image of it in your mind, you're not going to be able to see it in reality. So your mind has to work with pictures. We have to draw a picture of it with our words. You can't just say, I am rich. You have to imagine what the richness looks like and feels like and smells like and sounds like, and create the picture of it, the feeling of it within your mind. That's why you have to do with weight loss. That's where you have to do with any kind of giving up, any addiction. And it can be very trying because willpower doesn't always work. You have to be able to imagine, be able to make an image of what it's like to be in that state. Your mind can only work in the present tense. No matter what, your mind only knows right now. And technically, only right now exists. So your mind is not working in a future state. It's only working in the present state. So we have to imagine, make the images real of what we want it to be like now, regardless of what the physicality is, regardless of what our reality is telling us. We have to be able to make it into a now picture, a now statement, a now feeling. As Neville Goddard would say, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That means to put on like a garment or a cloak. This is the only way the mind will work, is in the present tense. I am incredibly intelligent. What does that look like? At least it's a now statement. Every habit of action is run by a habit of thought. So this goes back to the belief systems, or the statement, first you make your habit, then your habits make you. Or as a guy I work with says, first you do the work, then the work does you. The work we put in towards our habits, the habits we make us. And working to change habits can be difficult. So start small. You want to exercise and be somebody who exercises every day? Start small. Start with 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups, and walking 10 miles. Oh, no. Walking, say, down the street and back. And then next week, do 20 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, and walk down the street and back twice. Build on it. The mind believes that loss is bad and gain is good. That's why it's difficult to lose weight. And nobody in this country wants to be a loser, and that's why quitting things is very difficult. So if we stop doing something, it works better than quitting. And if we're wanting to lose weight, I've always said, well, instead of losing weight, why don't you gain muscle? And just people are like, well, that's semantics. Well, it may be semantics, but to the mind, it's a reality. If you gain muscle, which is 5.5 times denser than fat, it's going to take up a lot less space. If you gain muscle, you're automatically going to lose fat. But the point is that you can be a woman at 140 pounds and a ballerina, or a woman at 140 pounds the same height and working toward obesity. It depends on how it is arranged. So with loss being a bad thing and gain being a good thing, work to look at what you're gaining with what you've been working on with your beliefs. What am I gaining? How can I make gaining a part of the intrinsic beliefs I'm working with? Your mind does not respond well to words like don't, can't, no, not, later, maybe, and tomorrow. It doesn't like conjunctions. I can't do that. Well, it knows that maybe I can, maybe I can't. That's one of the rules that I don't necessarily agree with 100%. But I know that it's still there in some form and has to be worked with. You know, I can't have chocolate cream. I can't have chocolate pie. I can't have chocolate milk. Well, your mind's going to work to move you from pleasure or from pain to pleasure. So the can'ts are going to lose. I can't remember anything. That one, it's probably going to stick with you. I can't do that, which is something positive for you and wants to move you from pain to pleasure. So you can't do that. But when it comes to working deeply with the mind, it doesn't really like conjunctions. And it likes to work only in the present tense. It can't remember later. I need to remember. I have a habit of, I need to remember. So instead of saying, I need to remember, I'll just say, ice. And I'm creating a tapping thing for ice. One of the best ways to remember is just simply write a list. I do it all the time. Your conscious mind is your mind of choice, and your subconscious mind is your mind of, excuse me. Your conscious mind is your mind of choice, and your subconscious mind is your mind of preference. I prefer to feel comfortable and not feel pain. That's why I deal with a moment of pain, injecting the heroin, instead of dealing with the situation that needs to be dealt with. For me, it's always been tobacco, alcohol, marijuana. I never used heroin. I was shot up with morphine a few times when I had mononucleosis a long time ago, but that was for physical pain, and I did not like it. I did not like it at all. So when people tell me that, oh man, you can't possibly know what it is to do heroin and, all this stuff, I'm like, well, heroin is made from morphine, and I didn't like morphine, so you can keep it. My preference is to be sober, or my preference used to be, hand me my beer and watch this. And I'm in it. And it wasn't hold my beer and watch this. It was hand me my beer and watch this. I'm shotgunning the beer while I'm doing it. Now it's, I don't need a beer, and that really seems like a stupid idea in the first place. Criticism withers spirit and praise builds it up. This is one that I can't stress enough. Whether it's self-criticism or criticism of others, it just is destructive. We really have to work to overcome our criticism. And the thing about it is, the worst critics have the worst criticism saved for themselves, and you're never going to hear it. They're making up for something. They're making up for a loss that they feel inside themselves, or an emptiness they feel inside themselves. So criticizing ourselves or criticizing others, it's going to wither the spirit. It's going to wither the will. And that's why I encourage my sons. And I asked my younger son once, I said, I'm trying to encourage you with this particular thing. Is it coming off as criticism? And he says, no, I just don't want to do it. I said, okay, fine. I've learned with him that when it comes to something he is extremely talented with, I have to back off and not encourage him. Otherwise, he won't do it. And when it came to school, I would talk to him about his grades. And finally, I looked at him and I said, son, I'm not expecting you to be your brother and get A's and B's, but pass the damn class. That's all I want. Pass the damn class. And his mother was sitting there and said, yeah, that's all we want. Pass the class. And he started getting A's and B's. The mind will make things harder. He was comparing himself to his older brother, and his older brother remembers things incredibly well. So of course he was getting A's and B's. The older brother, the only reason he got B's is because he was bored with the class. Me, when I was bored with a class, that was the class I was gonna damn sure make the A in. If you're gonna bore me this bad, I'm gonna know so much of the information, you're gonna say you didn't need to answer so much of this question. An idea will stay in the subconscious until it is replaced by a new idea, and the longer an idea remains, the more opposition to a new idea. So these things we've learned in childhood, they've been there how long? And we wonder why we can't change the idea. But it's been there for how long? If you've been smoking for 40 or 50 years, the idea of smoking being comfortable has been there so long that it's going to take a while to change it. If you've been drinking alcohol for 10, 15, 20, 30 years to dull your pain, it's going to take a while to change it. And I'm speaking from personal experience. Now, alcohol quit having any effect on me. I had lessened my use of alcohol, and I had lessened my use of marijuana by conscious decision. But when alcohol quit having any effect on me, and when marijuana started having the reverse effect of what I wanted, I stopped them. The mind will only accept suggestions that it wants to hear. This one, oh, you really have to train your mind to want to hear something. Marines chanting 1,000 times a day, kill, 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 kill. Running through the rain and mud and sand and wind and having things thrown at them and things blowing up around them. I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. They really have to work to get to that point. And that is why I so respect our Navy SEALs, simply because they've trained themselves to like and love what they go through. And if they can like and love the harshness they go through, simply changing our own beliefs while working with the same concept is not nearly as dangerous as what they have gone through just simply in their training. The mind believes that you couldn't possibly have an agenda and would not say anything that is incorrect. It doesn't make any difference whether you're joking or not. You really have to be careful with your mind. It believes everything. It doesn't know that you're joking. It doesn't even care that you're joking. It's just going to believe what you say. My horrible memory is one of the ones I hear consistently. Oh, I just have a horrible memory. Oh, I have the worst memory ever. And they say it in a joking manner and then wonder why they have the worst memory ever. And it's because they're consistently repeating to themselves how horrible their memory is. I have an incredible memory. I don't have a perfect memory yet, but I do have an incredible memory. And in fact, the problem I have is information overload. There's times when I want to access things, and because of learning Spanish, I might access it in 2 languages. Or I want to use a particular word, and there's about 8 synonyms that all fit, and they all jam up together at once. The mind cannot let in or act on words that are indescribable. If you cannot use words that are describing something, that are making a picture, that are imagining something, your mind's not going to let in whatever you're working on. It really is that simple. Anything that is indescribable, your mind's not going to let in, no matter how much you want it to. So you really have to work with the mind in order to get it to understand what you're imagining or what you're making the image of. And if you can't draw a picture of it, your mind's not going to let you have it. You have to be able to draw the picture with words. You have to be able to tell a different story. You have to be able to work within the confines of the mind, within the rules of the mind, in order to be able to surpass the mind. And after a while, you will surpass the mind. It's not a perfect system. But what you repeat, your mind will believe. No matter how it's repeated, no matter what it is, the mind learns by repetition. So draw your picture and repeat it as much as you can. I am enough. I love myself. I am free. I see myself pulling those horrible, heavy, emotional chains out of my heart and shattering them. I know that I am enough. I know that I love myself. I know that I am free. And I'm envisioning being unshakable, to where even a person could grab me and they couldn't pull me out of my center. So repeat 10,000 times a day. I am enough. I love myself. I am free and unshakable. And free yourself. Download the rules of the mind. Start working with them today. Thank you for your healing. I cannot stress it enough. I know that this is not my usual live setup, but it's what worked for the timing. Thank you so much, and thank you for your healing.